What is the easiest, the most succinct way to summarize the last century? Well, it was a century of mass destruction, ideologically justified destruction. It was first fascism, Nazism, and then, during the Cold War, the threat of communism. By the end of the last century, America came out victorious. Those ideological foes who really were very close to each other, they weren't on opposite sides of a spectrum. Both totalitarianisms truly came from the left. That is why it was the National Socialist Workers' Party that Hitler led. But both of them had been vanquished. By who? By us, by America, the greatest nation on the planet, that defeated Hitler and defeated the Soviet Union. But is it so simple? Is our war with totalitarian ideology over? Let's listen to a man who was crucial, who played a seminal role in defeating the Soviet Union, and the warning he had for totalitarian threats inside the United States, the great Ronald Reagan.
If fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism. And what is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation. Well, isn't this the liberal philosophy? The conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government, get off my back, get out of my pocket, and let me have more control of my own destiny.
Recent events here in America sadly have proven him right. He's back on the rally trail. President Trump has a very distinct warning for all of us about the threat of the totalitarian ideology that is today's communism.
Like it or not, we are becoming a communist country. That's what's happening. That's what's happening. We are beyond socialism. You know, when you have no press, when you have no press that you can talk to, that's how a communist country begins. They have no press.
That is happening today, but you don't have to listen to conservative politicians. Listen to the other side. Black Lives Matter, which has caused so much damage to this country, was founded by individuals who on camera have admitted their ideological identity.
I think of a lot of things. The first thing I think is that we actually do have an ideological frame. Myself and Alicia in particular are trained organizers. We are trained Marxists.
We are trained Marxists as Americans in America? Now this is remarkable given what is happening right now, less than 100 miles off the coast of America. People who have been living for 62 years under communist dictatorship on the island of Cuba are shouting, are protesting for their freedom, shouting for liberty, waving our flag. Liberty, liberty, liberty. Give it to us now. And they're using our flag to demand that human right. Here in America, the threat is the greatest it has ever been, which has led to Americans of Cuban descent demonstrating outside the White House, outside the building where the man who bears the title President of the United States is avoiding this crisis. His administration saying this has nothing to do with liberty, this is about COVID or vaccines. Well, we're going to delve deeper into the threat of communism here in America, and we're going to tell you the truth about Cuba and how what is happening there can inform our fight here in America. We're going to talk about the revolution, what actually happened there, the costs to human lives, to dignity, and to human rights. We're going to tell you the truth about the Castros, about Che Guevara, a racist and a murderer, a man who during the Obama administration was feted. The footage of the President of the United States chumming it up with the Castros, standing under a giant mural of a murderer like Che Guevara, and then going to a ball game and yucking it up with a dictator who runs political prisons. The truth is, communism has wrought indescribable damage across the world. One book written by erstwhile left-wing sociologists and historians tells you everything you need to know. The Black Book of Communism gives us the numbers. From Vietnam to Poland, from Estonia to Cambodia, more than 100 million human beings murdered in the name of the workers' paradise and Karl Marx utopia. That is the reality of communism in Cuba, or the communism they are trying to effect here in America. Now let's talk to somebody who literally wrote the book on the threat of communism to the United States. It's Countdown to Socialism. He is one of the few truth tellers on Capitol Hill. Congressman Devin Nunes, welcome to the Gorka Reality Check.
Well, thank you, Dr. Gorka. It's great to be with you, as always.
Congressman, that's a very, very provocative title. Could you explain to us why you chose Countdown to Socialism for a book about politics inside this nation?
Well, it's interesting you should ask. So it should look familiar to those of you who have studied Chairman Mao's little red book. And that's essentially what I modeled it off of, just to kind of mock the Chinese communists and Marxists everywhere. But what's in the book is really shocking, because I wrote this a year ago leading up to the election. That's why it was called Countdown to Socialism. And I really talk about it. It's a very easy read. And it's simply put, I talk about the propaganda machine for the Democrats, the media. And then I talk about big tech and how they're censoring. And of course, I wrote that at the time. I didn't know that they were going to hide, big tech was going to collude with the media to hide the Hunter Biden laptop from hell, as it's now known. And so, and then you wonder a lot with Marxism, and how do people fall for this? You see what's happening in Cuba, Venezuela. What happened to the old Soviet Union. I mean, places where your family was from in Eastern Europe. How does this happen? And I talk in basically the last chapter, and I say, look, this really can't happen because I've watched it my whole life from right here in California, as we went from the home of Ronald Reagan when I was a young boy to now complete apparatchiks, where one of them now has surpassed her placement in California as a U.S. Senator and is now the Vice President of the United States. So it really can happen where they just blind people and poison people, and that's what's happening.
So, Congressman, you are one of the true few freedom fighters on Capitol Hill. You're not just representing the 22nd District in California. You are pushing back on these radicals and these extremists nationally. From your perch as an insider, can you explain to all of our viewers here on Newsmax, what was the dynamic? What was the scenario? Was there a conscious decision by the likes of Schumer, Pelosi, Biden, when he was compos mentis, to take the Democrat Party down this socialist, radical, proto-communist path? Or was it a case of like the revolution in Russia in 1917, of a minority like the Squad, like AOC and Bernie, taking control of this party, which was normal back in the time of JFK? JFK wouldn't be allowed in today's Democrat Party. So explain to us how socialism came to America, Congressman.
Well, look, that's kind of what the book was about. It was a warning because I watched this happen in slow motion. So they deployed this first here in California, and they actually used, I call this is really neo-Marxism. So it's a new form of Marxism. I like to say that at least what Xi and the Chaicoms are doing and what Putin's doing in Russia, they want the power, and what they're doing is they're taking entire companies and they're making sure that they get money. So they're trying to run a hybrid where they control the commanding heights of the economy and they fund their communist movement. What's different about this, what I call neo-Marxists and what they're following here in this country, and you almost have to wonder if there are not billionaires or governments funding some of this movement, and have they been funding some of this movement, particularly as it relates to energy and the environment. So using radical extremism, radical environmental extremism by running around saying, oh, global warming, the oceans are rising, we got to be careful in San Francisco. That got turned into drying up. The place where I'm sitting right now, the San Joaquin Valley, which is the most fertile farmland in the world, and they're dumping and wasting water out to the ocean, while at the same time they're telling people, oh, put in fake grass, cut down 15%. We don't have any water because of global warming and the big bad Republicans who are polluting the earth. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. The water systems that were built here are some of the most, in world history, they are a marvel. They're the most important irrigation systems, the most sophisticated in the world. And they were built to withstand not 1, not 2, 5 years of drought, okay? So how do you go to now, where now, over the last 25 years, all of a sudden the state of California has no more water? Well, it's because they have fooled the people and they're just allowing water to flow out to the ocean. Why is this important? Because that is an example of how you ignore the science, you ignore the math, you shut off water projects to starve people because of a radical ideology that what they really want here in California, if you can believe it, what the radical left really wants, and this is why I call it neo-Marxism, they don't want population growth. And they finally got it. In 2020, California, for the first time in its history, the most blessed piece of real estate on the planet, we dropped population. It's hard to understand, but that's what happens.
It was one of the most beautiful states. It was a paradise, and it has been destroyed by left-wing politics. But you're there and you're fighting. We've got literally 30 seconds left. The big question: is the GOP fit for this fight? Can they defeat what you call the neo-Marxists? Yes or no?
I believe yes, but they still have a long way to go. I still have to get my colleagues convinced to understand the danger of talking to the fake news propaganda machine, which is known as the media, and also trying to move people to new tech platforms, because that ultimately could harm us in this next election. It already is harming us with the censorship.
We can win. Listen to this man. If we have more like him, if we have more citizen politicians who are citizens first and politicians last, but we have to take it seriously. It's up to us to make sure the establishment GOP understands. In the meantime, read his book right now, Countdown to Socialism. Support this man, California's 22nd district. God bless you, Devin Nunes. I'm Sebastian Gorka.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news channel, now in more than 70 million homes. You can get Newsmax TV on your cable system or check your cable guide. And if your system doesn't carry Newsmax, call them, tell them you want Newsmax TV, because we're real news for real people.